Howdy, folks. Time for another Sunday update. Some of what went on this week. I had mentioned in the last update I was going to have a meeting around mineral resources throughout the county and some history on where that went. The meeting that was scheduled when I met with them turned out to not be the thing that I thought we were meeting for. So, unfortunately, that wasn't terribly productive in that regard. Uh, it was more of a discussion around the Coos County Urban Renewal District on the North Spit and some ideas around just encouraging industry, which wasn't what I was there for. But that happens sometimes. You get a lot of meetings, people want to talk to you about different things, and it's not always the thing you thought it was going to be when you schedule the meeting. I had a meeting this week as well about the housing trust that I mentioned last week to provide folks easier access entry point into the housing market and build equity so that they can flip the house when they move into a property they're buying. And the land trust keeps the property to ensure that the whole thing keeps being used for that purpose. It was a good conversation. It was a connection between the housing authority, somebody working on this project, and someone engaged in development. And I think it was a really good outcome there, which was nice. And then some conversation around how, let's see, how some of the local homeless programs could be more outreach oriented and how they can do that work and still be good neighbors. So it was a really productive meeting overall. I've got another meeting along those lines coming up this week. Attended an Energy Trust presentation. So those folks help do studies and support or incentivize investment in sustainable energy projects, not just sustainable, but also just general energy resilience, which isn't always solar or wind. They've got other options in their generators. So that was a good meeting. And then energy efficiency was a point. So we'll be reaching back out to them. One of the things they've found is just going through some of these old buildings and getting new insulation around the pipes or making sure everything is set the way it's supposed to as far as electric flow can be a money saver. So that'll be a conversation I have with them as well to increase maybe energy efficiency at some of our buildings. That conversation's already going on through another channel. This will just be another approach to a greater efficiency because not spending money is a great way to have more money available. Uh, let's see. Oh, and that was also a good meeting to be at because we were working on, or I was working on with someone, a um, grant to get a county-wide resilience study done for energy and see what the wattage we would need um, to sustain ourselves, what options we had to make a stronger local grid would be. And unfortunately, the money for that grant was canceled, so that wasn't able to happen. Work sessions should start broadcasting this week. I know I mentioned a while back that that was happening, and I thought it was, but it turned into something that had a bit more discussion to it. But I think last week in the meeting that I requested, yeah, I think they'll be broadcasting now. We're just going to have some technical things that we work around. So the system that the county uses right now for its meetings for the remote side, the broadcasting and such, was put together very quickly during COVID when a requirement came out from the state to have that accessibility option. And actually, Coos County was one of the few counties that met the deadline the state put out. But it also means everything was put together very quick, and there might be ways we can do it better. So we're going to start broadcasting, see where we can make some improvements, and it may have hiccups as we go into this, but by the end of the whole, I think we're going to end up with a good system where we can include the community more remotely. And also, I'm wanting them to be recorded and posted to YouTube or some other platform so that people can access them after hours if they aren't able to join in the middle of the day. just taking care of business stuff happened this week, so there were personnel reviews on some of our staff. Even as commissioners, we're working with some staff at the management level, and that requires us to do reviews of them from time to time. So that was a thing that happened. It's just one of those pieces that's not flashy, not showy. You probably never see it if I don't mention it happens, but it's a thing that's in the background when you're a commissioner. Jurisdictional planning, that conversation is still moving along. So I'm forgetting the name of the group within the county right now that was wanting to have point on that, but there's kind of an organization that has point on implementation of some new software. We're working as the county with some cities on a unified software, and that's a good time to look at some of the planning and where we can have some more commonalities across the cities and the county so that developers have an easier time coming in through simple understanding of codes and common codes. And I ran through, I almost forgot one of the big ones. 2 of the properties that the county have sold. So there are 2 of the ones that were inherited from the Bologna Ranch. That was a nonprofit that worked with kids who had some challenges, legal challenges. It dissolved a couple of years ago now, and properties reverted back to the county when that happened. So they've sold, and we had a discussion this week in a work session over what we're going to do with the money. Now, a person could just take it all, patch the hole for the next budget, and then not have that money the year after. But we're looking at what we can use that money for that'll either create sustainable savings or recurring revenue, so that we can have a solution that comes and it lasts in perpetuity, or at least for a substantial amount of time. Something we saw done with money in the past with the county is it would get some money that wasn't assured for the next year or the year after. It would spend it to fill in some gaps, and then that money's just not there and you're in a crisis again next year. I'm expecting this next budget cycle to be rough, but we want to look now at this money on how we can make it so a budget cycle 2, 3, 4, 5 years out is not as rough. So what I had recommended, there's some timber property we might pick up because that generates recurring revenue. It allows us to do a bigger harvest because we've got more land, so we can harvest more land and still maintain a healthy rotation without just clear cutting everything. And I think we're all on the same page with that one. There's a building that was talked about would help save some money, and I proposed we do keep about $600,000 just to the side to see what happens, because like I said, I've got concerns what this next budget cycle is going to be like. We've seen the federal government through the executive and the legislative branches trying to take away our timber dollars. And if those are gone, it's going to be more than just law enforcement. It's going to be, can we even meet any of the legal obligations of the county? It's going to be a broader topic than patrol. So having money in reserve is kind of important because of what that would look like. There's a lot of danger right now. We're trying to plan accordingly. And we had the veterans stand down this week, so that was cool. Somebody was telling me they think it's the most people they've seen at the veterans stand down, and I think it was definitely a large crowd. I was there with the other 2 commissioners. John and Rod were both there, and we all took some time grilling. So they gave me the hot dogs because that was the safest to have me cook. But yep, we did that. I haven't heard about any food poisoning outbreaks, so I did good enough at the grilling. And then the big thing to talk about was a very short meeting for my purpose, but is a big topic for the community because there was an update and a presentation by the Port of Coos Bay and their contractor, whose name I'm forgetting, to do basically an information gathering, talk a little about what they're looking at, what they got from some surveys they sent out as far as the interest in the community, what they want to see the future of the port be. And of course, It wasn't specifically what they were there for, but if you're talking about the port right now, you're going to be talking about the PCIP, the intermodal port. I don't know why I forgot the PC part. But yeah, the big port project on the North Spit. And it had interesting outcomes. There were a lot of perspectives, and I see more than one thing can be true at a time. What's that? Oh, more than timber. Yeah, we've got to find something we can spend it in that's going to save money or generate recurrent money. So we talked about some other things as well. It could be used to pay down an amount of PERS that would save, I want to say 70 or 80,000 a year, which is kind of a small number, but it is a savings over time. And then that would compound. It would be substantially more as you move down the road 5 to 10 years. There was talk about improvements to infrastructure around some of the county buildings so that we can reduce our bills. So there's more than just those things being talked about. Some of them trickled out through the week from staff, and no decisions were made. We just kicked that meeting off to get the conversation started and see what else shakes loose as everybody turns their gears on it. So, yeah, I want something with a more predictable future. We just got to find what those things are. Port project. So, let's see. Yeah, mixed outcomes, mixed conversations. I'm trying to think of where to start on this one. And I mean, some of what I saw, positive and negative. So they had a slideshow and they had live survey questions you could do. They capped out on response amounts, but the first one did word cloud. So people could type in what they wanted, and it would take the most common words, pop them into a word cloud, and the more common a word is, the bigger the word would show up, and the less the word occurred in the input, it would be a tinier word. So we had a lot of testimony in the room against on some environmental grounds, and we had some people that came in from Eugene complaining about what it would do to the rail next to where they live. So there are some houses around a rail yard in Eugene, and I guess folks from there came down to testify against the port project because they don't want that rail yard as active. And then on the positive side, obviously there are jobs. There are jobs, and the assessed value of the property would be beneficial for the local tax base because, as folks might remember, property tax is the main contributor to the general fund for counties, and that is basically our law enforcement budget, the clerk, assessor. A lot of these have some offset grants, but the biggest user of the general fund is law enforcement. And the project I'm still working on, the income tax thing, is years down the road. But right now, none of your income taxes come back to the county unless the state grants them in a way they say they want it spent, which generally isn't law enforcement. The state has trouble guessing what we need, is the easiest way to say that. So, environmental considerations versus jobs and, having kind of purpose again. Some of the input as well that was more middle of the road was folks want to see the port spending money on maintaining the infrastructure it has. So something to know when it comes to grants coming out of the state and the feds, and just broadly speaking, you'll see this out of the larger government. They like to spend money on building things. It is very hard to get them to spend money on maintaining things. And as an example, at one point when I was on the council for Coos Bay, we wanted what is it? Coos Bay Boulevard, the road that's very twisty, comes down and goes up and leads to the hospital. We wanted to talk to the government about getting that fixed. We needed grant money to do it, though, because it's extremely complicated and expensive. And in no uncertain terms, we were told, we understand it's a critical road, but FEMA will pay for it when it breaks. So, not to maintain it, but the capital repair when it's gone and the problem's there and we already have a crisis. We don't get to avoid the crisis. They'll just pay for it when it happens, maybe, hopefully. And you see that a lot. But to that same point, it is an issue. I've been vocal in the past, especially while I was on council, about I didn't feel that the port is a good partner. They caused a lot of problems for us. They weren't easy to work with. They delayed some projects. They didn't take accountability for stuff we believed they should. The port was not a good partner for many years for us. But I've seen a change in leadership. I've seen a change in board, and I think I've seen a change in perspective. So I still share some of that pessimism. But I see a positive opportunity. And I have no doubt they'll need support in continuing to improve as a partner. But that's whether the PCIP goes through or not, that's going to be something we're working with because the Port of Coos Bay is an integral part of Coos County. I made sure to testify in the meeting that I wanted to see maintenance done that will benefit the shipping fleet the commercial fleets in Charleston, and I want to know when they get farther down the road some kind of study about what the impact to fishing and crabbing and shrimping will be for us, because we can't throw everything out for one industry. I want to see multiple industries because that makes us resilient. And I know in the background, they're not conversations I'm in, but I've heard the conversations that are taking place with other electeds that talk about how can this project invest in the local community, build some goodwill, show that they are invested in being a good neighbor. So that's beneficial. And boo-ba-doo-boo-doo. We got that. We got the folks from Eugene. And yeah, I didn't want to get too far down the road on history, but one of the points that was made was what the consequence when there was the timber collapse in the early 90s was. So there are quite a few folks that show up at meetings anymore that just aren't from here. They don't have a great deal of history. There are a lot of people who came here from other places many years ago, and they know more of the history, and sometimes we get folks who have come here even for many years and don't necessarily know a lot of history. So early 90s, nutshell, big thing happens, ecological, timber shuts down, less forestry work, and by the late 90s, the articles start coming out about the meth epidemic, crime, and by my age, I was able to see things kind of collapse through the 90s and go really downhill. And the comparison was made there, which people argue against it. They argue for a lot of reasons. But at the end of the day, one thing happened, and then another thing definitely happened in a straight line. The two are linked. But we also want to be careful. We don't want to destroy what we have. So that's going to be the crux for me, is I need to see the studies as we go forward over what the actual impact will be in our region. I get information sometimes from folks that are opposed about what's happening in other shipyards, and then I learn, well, there's another shipyard in California that gets cited a lot as an economic example of why it doesn't work. And then this week I learned from somebody that lived there that the reason that port didn't work is they didn't take into account the elevation of a bridge nearby, so they ended up not being able to do all the business they thought they were going to do and invested in. So it's going to be a tricky thing with a lot of little details to learn about as we go. I'm not investing too much time in it right now, despite this update, but I know a lot of people are interested in it. But it's one piece. We've also got opportunities. We've seen a lot of development over the last few years in Coos Bay. We've seen some going in North Bend. Powers has joined the South Coast Development Council. Myrtle Point is considering. We've got developments popping up. We've had some large industries reach out during this time frame just since I got on the commission. There's a lot of potential out there. So this is one piece. I'm sure it'll be talked about a lot, but that's where I'm going to end the update for today, and we will see y'all next week. Have a good one.